At my brother's $800,000 wedding in the Hamptons, my mother slipped me an envelope. "Here's your bus fare home, Maya. Don't embarrass us tonight." Inside was $50 and a Greyhound ticket. I smiled, tucked it away, and whispered, "You might want to check who actually signed the venue contract." Her face went white. 20 minutes later, the entire reception collapsed, and I never said another word. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. The mahogany boardroom table stretched before me like a battlefield, its polished surface reflecting the late afternoon sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. I'd requested this meeting with my parents 3 weeks before my brother Tyler's wedding, hoping for what I now realized was an impossibly naive conversation about family, fairness, and recognition. My father, Richard Caldwell, adjusted his platinum cufflinks, a nervous habit I'd observed since childhood, while my mother, Patricia, maintained her practiced smile, the one she reserved for charity galas and difficult conversations. Between them sat a leather portfolio containing what I assumed were wedding planning documents, though I wouldn't be privy to those details. "Maya, sweetheart," Patricia began, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when managing expectations. "We wanted to discuss the wedding arrangements with you personally." I nodded, maintaining professional composure despite the knot forming in my stomach. At 32, I'd learned to armor myself against disappointment, but hope had a way of sneaking through the cracks anyway. "Tyler's wedding is going to be quite the affair," Richard continued, opening the portfolio to reveal photographs of an oceanfront estate. "The Meridian Club in East Hampton, 300 guests, full weekend celebration. Patricia has been planning this for 2 years. The photographs showcased manicured gardens, a private beach, and a mansion that belonged in architectural magazines. I recognized the venue from society pages, the kind of place where tech moguls and investment bankers celebrated life's milestones with casual extravagance. It sounds beautiful, I managed, though beautiful felt inadequate. It looked like something from a fairy tale, complete with gazebos draped in white silk and crystal chandeliers suspended over outdoor dining areas. Patricia's smile brightened, interpreting my response as enthusiasm rather than the quiet amazement. It actually was. "We've spared no expense. Tyler deserves nothing but the best for his special day with Sophia." The phrase hit me with familiar weight. Tyler deserves nothing but the best. It had been the soundtrack of my childhood, the explanation for every disparity, every time resources flowed in his direction while I learned to make do with less. "The catering alone is costing us $40,000, Richard added with the pride of someone accustomed to impressive numbers. "Michelin-starred chef, wine pairings, the works. Tyler specifically requested the sommelier who worked Princess Margaret's wedding." I blinked, processing the casual mention of $40,000 for a single meal. My annual grocery budget barely reached $3,000. That's quite generous. "Family is everything," Patricia said, reaching across to pat my hand, with manicured fingers that had never known calluses. "We want Tyler and Sophia to start their marriage surrounded by love and luxury." The irony wasn't lost on me. Family is everything, except when it comes to including all family members equally in that everything. "Which brings us to your role," Richard continued, pulling out another set of documents. "We've arranged for you to handle some of the vendor coordination. Small details but important ones. Flower deliveries, setup supervision, that sort of thing." I stared at the papers, recognizing my relegation to unpaid wedding labor disguised as family participation. "I see. And of course, we'll need you there early to help with any last-minute issues that arise," Patricia added. "You're so good at handling logistics, Maya. Much better than Tyler at those practical matters." The compliment stung worse than an insult would have. Yes, I was good at logistics because I'd been handling them since age 16, when Tyler's college acceptance required every spare dollar and I'd quietly managed household expenses so our Parents could afford his tuition without acknowledging the sacrifice. "What about my accommodations?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew the answer. Richard and Patricia exchanged one of those married couple glances, the kind that communicated volumes without words. "Well, the estate is fully booked with Tyler's groomsmen and Sophia's bridesmaids," Patricia explained. "We found you a lovely bed and breakfast about 40 minutes away. Very quaint, family-owned place. 40 minutes away. While Tyler's college, friends stayed in oceanfront suites. I'd be commuting from budget accommodations that were probably charming in the way places become when you can't afford better options. The important thing is that you're there for Tyler's big day," Richard added, closing the portfolio with finality. "This wedding is going to establish him in society. Sophia's family has connections throughout the East Coast business community. Her father sits on 3 corporate boards." I nodded, understanding the subtext. Tyler's wedding wasn't just a celebration, it was a networking event, a business investment disguised as family joy. And like most investments, it required capital they were willing to spend on appreciating assets while treating other family members as overhead costs. "There is one small matter," Patricia continued, her voice dropping to the register she used for delicate topics. "We wanted to mention that seating arrangements have been quite challenging with so many prominent guests." My stomach dropped before she finished the sentence. "You'll be at table 18, near the kitchen entrance. It's actually perfect because you can keep an eye on the service flow and handle any issues that come up. Table 18, near the kitchen entrance, where I could work during the reception instead of celebrating my brother's wedding like a guest." The message was crystal clear. I was staff, not family. "Of course," I said quietly, surprised by how steady my voice remained. "Wonderful." Patricia clapped her hands together as if we'd just solved a delightful puzzle. "Now there is one tiny favor we need to ask." Richard shifted uncomfortably, and I recognized the setup. The tiny favor that would inevitably be enormous. "Tyler's decided he wants to surprise Sophia with a special gift during the reception," Patricia explained. "A diamond tennis bracelet from Tiffany. $35,000. But you know how generous Tyler is with the people he loves. $35,000. More than I'd made in some years when I was starting my freelance consulting business, surviving on ramen noodles and library internet while building a client base. "The thing is," Richard continued, "with all the wedding expenses, we're a bit cash-strapped at the moment. Just temporarily, you understand. Tyler's been so focused on wedding planning that he hasn't had time to handle his business affairs properly." I almost laughed. Tyler's business affairs consisted primarily of networking events and lunch meetings funded by the trust fund our grandfather had established, the same trust fund that had somehow never applied to my education or career development. "We were wondering if you might be able to help us out," Patricia said with that bright smile. "Just a short-term loan until after the honeymoon. Tyler will pay you back as soon as they return from the Maldives." The Maldives? Of course they were. Honeymooning in the Maldives. 2 weeks at a resort that probably cost more per night than my monthly rent. $35,000 is a significant amount, I said carefully. "Oh, we wouldn't ask for the full amount," Richard clarified quickly. "We've already covered $20,000. We just need 15 to complete the purchase. Just 15,000. As if $15,000 was pocket change. Something I could casually loan without impact on my own financial stability. I thought about my savings account, built dollar by careful dollar over years of 60-hour work weeks, and delayed. Gratification. The emergency fund I'd created after learning that financial security was something I'd have to build myself without family safety nets or trust fund cushions. "I'll need to check my accounts," I said finally. Of course," Patricia nodded enthusiastically. "Take your time. Well, not too much time. We need to place the order by Friday to ensure delivery before the wedding." Friday. 4 days to decide whether to drain my emergency fund for Tyler's romantic gesture, another investment in his happiness while mine remained an afterthought. As we wrapped up the meeting, Patricia handed me a thick folder, All the vendor, contact information and timeline details, she explained. You're such a lifesaver, Maya. I don't know what we'd do without you handling all these practical matters. I accepted the folder, feeling its weight both literal and metaphorical. Inside were dozens of contracts, payment schedules, and coordination, requirements that would consume my time for the next 3 weeks. Unpaid labor disguised as family duty. Walking to my car afterward, I felt the familiar sensation of being simultaneously essential and invisible. Essential enough to handle logistics, loan money, and solve problems, but invisible when it came to recognition, appreciation, or equal treatment. The drive home took me through the neighborhood where I'd grown up, past the colonial house where Tyler still lived rent-free in the converted carriage house while finding his path at age 29. His path, it seemed, involved a lot of golf and very little accountability. My apartment, by contrast, was a modest one-bedroom I'd earned through years of building my consulting practice from nothing. No family connections, no trust fund, no safety net beyond what I'd created through discipline and determination. That evening, I spread the vendor contracts across my dining room table, reviewing timelines and contact information for an event that would cost more than most people's annual salaries. Florists, caterers, musicians, photographers, an army of professionals coordinating to create Tyler's perfect day. As I worked through the logistics, I began to notice something interesting. Several of the vendor contracts had been modified from their original terms, with payment schedules adjusted and deposit requirements altered. Someone had negotiated aggressively to secure better pricing and terms. The signature on those modified contracts wasn't Richard's or Patricia's flowery script. It was mine. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. The realization hit me slowly, then all at once. The Meridian Club booking, the catering contract, the photography package, dozens of vendors who had agreed to work at Tyler's wedding based on agreements I'd negotiated months earlier during what I'd thought were preliminary discussions about potential events. My parents hadn't just asked me to handle vendor coordination for Tyler's wedding. They'd used my professional reputation and business relationships to secure a luxury wedding they couldn't actually afford, leveraging my credibility to obtain services they had no intention of paying for themselves. The $35,000 bracelet request suddenly made perfect sense. They needed my money because they'd already spent theirs on a wedding they'd booked using my credentials. I sat back in my chair, staring at contracts bearing my signature authorizing hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses for an event I'd been relegated to coordinating from table 18. For the first time in 32 years, I understood exactly what I was worth to my family and exactly what I was going to do about it. The next morning brought clarity with my coffee. I'd spent the night cross-referencing vendor contracts with my business records, and the picture that emerged was more complex than I'd initially realized. My parents hadn't just used my professional relationships, they'd systematically constructed an elaborate financial house of cards with my reputation as the foundation. The coffee shop near my office buzzed with the usual morning crowd of tech workers and consultants, their conversations a backdrop to my growing understanding of how thoroughly I'd been manipulated. I'd chosen this public space deliberately, needing the anonymity of strangers while I processed the scope of what I'd discovered. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Hey sis, Mom said you might help with the bracelet thing. Sophia's going." "To love it. You're the best." The casual assumption in his message, that of course I'd provide $15,000 for his romantic gesture, crystallized something that had been building for years. I screenshot the message and added it to a growing digital folder I'd created labeled Documentation. Back in my apartment that evening, I began what would become weeks of methodical investigation. My consulting business had trained me to trace financial patterns and identify systemic problems, skills that proved invaluable when applied to my own family's machinations. The first revelation came from my calendar history. Over the past 18 months, I'd attended dozens of what I'd thought were casual family dinners or informal meetings about potential projects. Patricia would mention needing help with a charity event, or Richard would ask my opinion on vendor selection for Tyler's engagement party. Each conversation felt natural, even flattering. My parents finally recognized my professional expertise. Now I could see the conversations for what they were. Data gathering sessions where my parents extracted information about my business contacts, learned about my negotiating strategies, and gradually built a comprehensive understanding of how to leverage my professional reputation. The Metropolitan Catering contract was the most damning example. I remembered the lunch meeting where Patricia had asked me to just take a look at their proposal for Tyler's engagement party. She'd claimed confusion about the technical terms and wondered if I could help clarify the language. I'd spent 2 hours on the phone with Metropolitan's event coordinator, Marcus Chen, walking through every detail of their service options. By the end of the call, we'd outlined a comprehensive package that could scale from intimate gatherings to large celebrations. Marcus had been so impressed with my thoroughness that he'd offered a 20% discount on future events if I referred other clients. 3 months later, that same proposal, with my suggested modifications and Marcus's discount, became the catering contract for Tyler's wedding reception. The contract bore my signature as the event planning consultant, with a note indicating I was coordinating logistics on behalf of the Caldwell family. I called Marcus directly. "Maya, great to hear from you," he answered warmly. "Everything still on track for the Caldwell wedding? That's going to be quite the celebration. Actually, Marcus, I'm calling to clarify something about the contract terms." "Of course. What can I help you with?" I took a breath. "The final payment schedule. Can you walk me through how that's structured?" Papers rustled in the background. "Let's see. We have the initial deposit, which was paid, then progressive payments tied to guest count confirmations. The final balance of $65,000 is due the week of the event. And who's responsible for that final payment?" "According to our agreement, you are, as the primary contact and event coordinator. Is there a problem with the payment schedule? We can certainly work with you if you need to adjust the timeline." Marcus's assumption hit me like ice water. According to the contract I'd unknowingly negotiated, I was financially responsible for Tyler's wedding catering. Not my parents, not Tyler. Me. "Marcus, I need to see the complete contract file. Can you email everything over?" "Absolutely." "Maya, is everything okay? You sound concerned." "Just doing some advanced planning," I lied smoothly. "I'll review everything and get back to you." The email arrived within an hour, and what I found made my hands shake. The contract clearly identified me as the primary event coordinator and financial guarantor for the Caldwell wedding celebration. My business credentials were listed, along with references to my successful coordination of other high-end events. Events I'd never actually coordinated, but which Marcus had assumed were my work based on our detailed discussions. I opened a bottle of wine and began calling other vendors. Elena Rodriguez at Hampton's Premier Florals confirmed that I was listed as the primary contact and payment guarantor for floral arrangements totaling $38,000. The elaborate centerpieces, ceremony arch, and bridal suite decor were all my financial responsibility according to the contract. James Patterson at Prestige Photography had similar records. The wedding photography package, including engagement, sessions, and a bound leather album, was a $22,000 commitment with my signature authorizing payment. By midnight, I'd contacted 7 different vendors. Each conversation revealed the same pattern. I was the official coordinator and financial guarantor for every aspect of Tyler's wedding celebration, from the string quartet to the vintage champagne service. The total amount I was legally obligated to pay, $487,000, nearly $500,000 for a wedding I'd learned about through vendor coordination requests, for a brother who lived rent-free while I'd built my business from scratch. I poured another glass of wine and began researching the Meridian Club itself. Their website showcased testimonials from satisfied clients, celebrity weddings, and corporate events that had made national news. The venue rental alone was $150,000 for a weekend celebration. The booking confirmation, which I found in my email after an exhaustive search, had been forwarded to me by Patricia with a note. Maya, can you review this for accuracy? Just want to make sure everything looks correct before we finalize. I'd responded with detailed feedback about menu options and service timing, never realizing that my input was being used to finalize a contract with my name as the responsible party. The wine was making everything clearer and more infuriating simultaneously. My parents had executed a sophisticated long-term con, using my professional competence against me to secure a luxury wedding they could never afford. Every family dinner where they'd asked my advice, every casual conversation about Tyler's future plans, every moment where they'd seemed to value my expertise, all of it had been strategic manipulation. The next morning brought a hangover and absolute clarity about what I needed to do. I called my lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, whom I'd worked with when establishing my consulting business. Jennifer specialized in contract law and had helped me navigate several complex client agreements over the years. Maya, what can I do for you? Jennifer's voice was crisp and professional, exactly what I needed. I need you to review some contracts I apparently signed. It's complicated. How complicated? $500,000 is complicated. Jennifer's pause lasted 3 beats. Come in this afternoon. Bring everything. Her office in downtown Seattle overlooked Elliott Bay, the view providing calm contrast to the chaos in my head. Jennifer reviewed each contract methodically, occasionally making notes or asking clarifying questions. Maya, she said finally, these contracts are legally binding. You're listed as the primary obliger for all goods and services. If payments aren't made, vendors can pursue you personally for the full amounts. Even though I never intended to, be financially responsible. Intent matters less than signature and legal standing. You sign these agreements in your capacity as a business owner with established credit and reputation. From the vendor's perspectives, you're a qualified contractor who arranges services on behalf of clients. I sank deeper into the leather chair. So I'm actually on the hook for Tyler's entire wedding. Unless payments are made by someone else, yes. The good news is that most of these contracts have escalation clauses. If you can demonstrate that you are acting as an agent rather than a principal, there might be grounds to renegotiate terms. And the bad news? Jennifer's expression turned sympathetic. The bad news is that proving agent status requires documentation showing you were explicitly authorized to act on behalf of another party. Do you have any emails, texts, or written communications where your parents clearly state they're hiring you to coordinate Tyler's wedding? I thought through months of conversations, casual requests, and family discussions. Everything had been verbal, informal, couched in language of family support rather than professional engagement. No, it was all presented as helping the family, not as a formal business arrangement. Then you have a problem. Legally, you appear to be the person who wanted these services and agreed to pay for them. That afternoon, I walked through Pike Place Market, trying to process the magnitude of my situation. Vendors called out their daily specials while tourists photographed the famous fish-throwing displays, the normalcy of life continuing around me while my world shifted on its axis. My phone rang with an unknown number. Ms. Caldwell, this is Rebecca Martinez from Platinum Limousine Services. I'm calling to confirm transportation arrangements for the Tyler Caldwell wedding next weekend. Another vendor I hadn't contacted yet. What transportation arrangements? The luxury coach service for guest shuttles, plus the vintage Rolls-Royce for the bride and groom. Your contract specifies pickup times and routes. Did you want to review the schedule? How much is the total service cost? $12,000 for the weekend package. Payment is due the day of service, as per your agreement. I closed my eyes. Can you email me the contract details? Of course, Ms. Caldwell. Everything will be perfect for your brother's big day. Even the transportation was my responsibility. My parents had managed to orchestrate an entire luxury wedding without spending a single dollar of their own money. That evening. I sat in my apartment surrounded by contracts, legal documents, and vendor communications that painted a clear picture of systematic fraud. My family had used my love, my professional competence, and my desire to help them create a financial obligation that would devastate me personally and professionally if vendors pursued collection. The truly masterful aspect was how they'd made me complicit in my own manipulation. Every signature, every conversation, every piece of advice I'd provided had been genuine. I wanted to help my family. I'd been proud when they seemed to value my expertise. They'd weaponized my best qualities against me. My laptop chimed with an email from Patricia. Maya, just wanted to confirm you can handle that bracelet situation by Friday. Tyler is so excited to surprise Sophia. Also, the wedding coordinator mentioned needing someone reliable on-site Saturday morning for vendor arrivals. You're such a lifesaver. I stared at the message, understanding finally that this was how it would always be. Maya, the lifesaver. Maya, the problem solver. Maya, the person who made everyone else's dreams possible while her own remained secondary considerations. For the first time in my adult life, I felt something beyond disappointment or resignation. I felt rage. Pure, crystalline rage at the audacity of people who claim to love me while systematically exploiting that love for their own benefit. I opened a new document on my laptop and began typing. Project Tyler Wedding, Strategic Response Plan. If my family wanted to play sophisticated games with contracts and financial obligations, I was about to show them what sophisticated really looked like. The wedding was still 2 weeks away. That gave me time to plan, to prepare, and to ensure that Tyler's perfect day would be exactly what my family deserved. The Seattle rain matched my mood as I sat across from my childhood friend Alex Morrison at our usual coffee shop in Capitol Hill. We'd maintained this monthly tradition since college, catching up over lattes while the Pacific Northwest weather provided its constant soundtrack outside. Today, however, I needed more than caffeine and friendship. I needed perspective from someone who'd known my family dynamics for decades. Alex stirred his drink thoughtfully after I'd outlined the contract situation, his expression shifting from surprise to something approaching anger. As a forensic accountant, he'd seen plenty of financial manipulation, but never involving people he'd grown up with. Maya, this isn't just family dysfunction, he said finally. This is systematic fraud. Your parents have essentially stolen your identity to secure services they can't afford. But they're family, I heard myself say, the words tasting bitter even as I spoke them. Family doesn't do this, Alex replied firmly. Clients don't do this. This is criminal behavior disguised as family obligation. He pulled out his tablet and began sketching a timeline. Walk me through how this started. When did they first begin asking for your professional advice? I thought back, trying to pinpoint the beginning of what I now recognized as a calculated campaign. About 2 years ago, when Tyler announced his engagement to Sophia, Mom started asking questions about event planning, saying she wanted Tyler's wedding to be special. And you helped because you wanted to be included. Exactly. For the first time in years, they seemed to value what I knew instead of just tolerating my presence at family gatherings. Alex nodded grimly. Classic manipulation technique. They identified your vulnerability, wanting family recognition, and exploited it systematically. He showed me his timeline sketch. Look at this pattern. Initial engagement, trust building through seemingly innocent requests, escalation to more significant commitments, and finally full exploitation with legal consequences. The visual representation made the manipulation even more stark. My parents had run a 2-year con game with me as the target, using my love for Tyler and desire for family acceptance as weapons against me. "What would you do?" I asked. Alex leaned back, considering. "Professionally? Document everything, consult with law enforcement about fraud charges, and pursue civil litigation for damages. Personally?" He paused, meeting my eyes. "I'd burn it. All down at the wedding reception in front of everyone they're trying to impress." The idea sent a thrill through me that I didn't expect. Public exposure, consequences delivered when they'd be most devastating to the image my parents had spent years cultivating. "That seems extreme," I said, testing the words. "Maya, they've put you on the hook for $500,000. Extremes don't begin to cover what they've done to you." That evening, I began what Alex had suggested: comprehensive documentation. I created a digital archive of every email, text message, and contract related to Tyler's wedding. The evidence told a story of sophisticated deception that went far beyond simple family favoritism. The deeper I dug, the more connections I found. My parents hadn't just used my vendor relationships, they'd leveraged my entire professional network. The photographer, James Patterson, had agreed to the reduced rate because I'd recommended his services to 3 other clients over the past year. Elena Rodriguez had given the Caldwell wedding priority scheduling because she considered me a valued business partner. Every professional relationship I'd built over years of careful work had been monetized for Tyler's benefit without my knowledge or consent. My laptop chimed with a video call from my college roommate, Sarah Kim, calling from her apartment in Portland. Sarah had become a successful marketing executive, and her outsider's perspective on my family had always been refreshingly honest. "You look terrible," she said without preamble when her face appeared on screen. "Thanks for the honesty." "What's going on? You sounded stressed in your text." I gave her the abbreviated version, watching her expression shift from concern to disbelief to outright fury. "Maya, please tell me you're not considering just paying for this wedding and moving on." "I don't know what I'm considering." "Because that would be the most expensive doormat behavior in history. Your parents literally stole $500,000 from you." "They haven't stolen anything yet. The bills aren't due until—" "Stop." Sarah's voice cut through my rationalization. "They've already stolen something more valuable than money. They've stolen your agency, your professional reputation, and your sense of self-worth. The money is just the final insult." Her words hit harder than I expected. Sarah was right. The financial obligation was devastating, but the emotional manipulation was worse. My parents had systematically used my strengths against me, turning my competence into a liability and my love into a weapon for self-destruction. "What would you do in my position?" I asked. "I'd make sure Tyler's wedding became a cautionary tale about what happens when you mess with the wrong person." After ending the call, I sat in my apartment's silence, feeling something shift inside me. The hurt and confusion that had dominated my emotions for days began crystallizing into something sharper and more focused. I opened my laptop and began researching. Tyler's fiancée, Sophia Blackwell, came from Connecticut old money, the kind of family where appearance and social standing mattered more than actual happiness. Her father, Charles Blackwell, sat on multiple corporate boards and had been featured in several business magazines as an example of principled leadership. The Blackwell family valued reputation above almost everything else. Their social circle included politicians, CEOs, and cultural leaders who wielded influence across multiple industries. For them, Tyler's wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a networking event where family honor and business connections intersected, which meant the stakes were much higher than a simple family gathering. I began mapping the guest list, cross-referencing names from the vendor communications with social media profiles and business directories. 300 guests included a federal judge, 2 state senators, the CEO of a major tech company, and various other luminaries who would be watching Tyler and Sophia exchange vows. The kind of people who would definitely notice if a wedding reception suddenly fell apart due to unpaid vendor bills. My phone buzzed with another text from Tyler. "Maya, did you talk to Mom about the bracelet? Time's running short, and I really want to surprise Sophia with it during the reception. You know how important this is to me." The casual entitlement in his message crystallized my resolve. Tyler had never once asked how I was doing, never inquired about my business or personal life, never shown the slightest interest in my well-being. But he knew exactly how to reach out when he needed something from me. I screenshot the message and added it to my documentation file. The next morning brought a call from Marcus Chen at Metropolitan Catering. "Maya, I wanted to touch base about the final details for the Caldwell reception. We're confirming dietary restrictions and finalizing the service timeline. Marcus, I need to clarify something about the payment arrangements." "Of course, what can I help you with?" "Have you received any payments directly from Richard or Patricia Caldwell?" Papers rustled in the background. "Let me check our records. No, all payments have come through your business account. The initial deposit and the 2 progress payments. Standard arrangement for corporate event planning. My business account." They'd somehow convinced Marcus that I was running Tyler's wedding through my consulting business, making it appear as a legitimate corporate event rather than a family celebration. "Marcus, when did I supposedly make those payments?" "The first. Deposit was 6 months ago, then progress payments at 3 months and 1 month ago." "Maya, is there a problem? You're starting to worry me." I checked my business banking records while we talked. Sure enough, 3 payments to Metropolitan Catering, totaling nearly $40,000, had been deducted from my account over the past 6 months. Payments I'd never authorized for a wedding I'd never agreed to fund. "Marcus, I'm going to need you to send me complete banking information for those payments, including authorization details." "Absolutely." "Maya, what's going on?" "I'm trying to resolve some internal accounting issues. Nothing that affects your service quality." After hanging up, I immediately called my bank's fraud department. The customer service representative, Janet, was sympathetic but thorough as she walked me through the payment authorizations. "Ms. Caldwell, these payments were all authorized through your online banking portal using your login credentials. The transactions appear legitimate from our security perspective. But I didn't make these payments. Someone else must have accessed my account. Do you suspect your login information was compromised?" I thought about family dinners where I'd casually checked email on my laptop, Tyler borrowing my computer to show Sophia photos, Patricia asking to use my phone when hers was charging, countless opportunities for someone to observe my passwords or access my devices. Yes, I think my family members may have accessed my accounts without permission. We can initiate a fraud investigation, but I need to warn you that proving unauthorized access can be challenging when it involves family members with potential legitimate access to your devices. Janet's warning highlighted another layer of my parents' strategy. They hadn't just manipulated vendor contracts, they'd used their access to my personal devices and financial information to actually steal money from my accounts. The fraud investigation would take weeks to resolve, but it provided official documentation of the unauthorized transactions that Jennifer Walsh could use in any legal proceedings. That afternoon, I met with Jennifer again, spreading bank records and vendor communications across her conference table. "Maya, this is significantly worse than we initially discussed," she said after reviewing the new evidence. "Your family has committed multiple felonies: identity theft, fraud, computer crimes, and theft of services. What are my options? Legally, you can file criminal charges and pursue civil litigation for damages. Practically, you can use this evidence as leverage to force them to take financial responsibility for the wedding expenses." Jennifer pulled out a legal pad and began sketching potential strategies. "Or you could take a third approach. Let the wedding proceed, then reveal the fraud publicly when it would cause maximum damage to their social standing. Is that legal?" "Perfectly legal. You're not required to keep their crimes secret to protect their feelings. The third option appealed to me more than I wanted to admit. Criminal charges would take months to resolve and might not result in full. Financial recovery. Civil litigation could drag on for years. But public exposure at Tyler's wedding reception would deliver immediate, devastating consequences while an audience of 300 influential witnesses watched. If I chose the third option, what would I need to do? Document everything, prepare evidence packages for key witnesses, and time your revelation for maximum impact. The goal would be to make it impossible for your family to deny what they've done while ensuring the people they're trying to impress understand exactly what kind of people they really are. Jennifer's clinical approach to revenge planning was oddly comforting. This wasn't about petty retaliation, it was about proportional consequences for criminal behavior. That evening, I began preparing what Jennifer had termed my evidence packages. Each folder contained copies of forged contracts, unauthorized banking transactions, and correspondence showing the systematic nature of my family's deception. The folders would go to specific guests at Tyler's wedding: Charles Blackwell, the business leaders in attendance, and anyone else whose opinion my parents valued enough to spend $500,000 trying to impress. As I worked, Tyler called. "Maya, Mom said you might need more time to think about the bracelet thing, but I'm running out of days here. Sophia's going to be so disappointed if I can't surprise her with something amazing." His voice carried the petulant tone of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted without effort or gratitude. "Tyler, can I ask you something?" "Sure, what's up?" "Do you know how much your wedding is costing?" He laughed. "Mom and Dad are handling all that stuff. Way above my pay grade. I just showed up and looked handsome, right?" "Right," I said quietly. "Just show up and look handsome." "So about the bracelet." "I'll handle it, Tyler. Don't worry about anything. You're the best sister ever. Sophia and I are so lucky to have you." After hanging up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my apartment, listening to Seattle's evening sounds through my windows. For 32 years, I'd been the person who handled things, who solved problems, who made other people's lives easier, while my own needs remained invisible. In 8 days, Tyler would stand in front of 300 guests and marry the woman he loved, in a celebration funded entirely by money stolen from his sister. Unless, of course, his sister had other plans. I opened my laptop and began typing an email to Jennifer. Walsh with the subject line, "Project Tyler Wedding, full implementation requested." It was time to show my family what happened when they mistook kindness for weakness. The week before, Tyler's wedding transformed my modest apartment into a strategic operations center. 3 computer monitors displayed vendor timelines, guest lists, and legal documents, while printer paper stacked in precise piles across every available surface. Jennifer Walsh had connected me with a private investigator named David Chen, no relation to Marcus the caterer, who specialized in financial crimes and evidence preparation. "Maya, you've built a prosecutable case here," David said, reviewing my documentation during our Tuesday morning meeting. His weathered face carried the expression of someone who'd seen every possible variation of human deception. "Your parents didn't just commit opportunistic fraud. This was a sophisticated, long-term financial crime with multiple moving parts." He spread photographs across my dining table, images of bank records, email exchanges, and contract signatures that told the story of systematic theft disguised as family cooperation. "The computer access alone constitutes multiple felonies," David continued. "Identity theft, unauthorized electronic fund transfers, fraud exceeding $50,000. We're talking about serious prison time if you pursue criminal charges." "But I'm not pursuing criminal charges," I reminded him. "Not yet anyway." "Right. Public exposure first, legal consequences as backup." David nodded approvingly. "Smart strategy. Nothing motivates wealthy people like the threat of social humiliation." He pulled out a manila envelope containing what he called the nuclear Option: a comprehensive report documenting not just Tyler's wedding fraud, but a pattern of financial irresponsibility that stretched back years. Tyler's credit card debts, unpaid loans from friends, and a series of failed business ventures that my parents had quietly covered up to maintain his golden child status. Your brother isn't just entitled, David explained. He's financially incompetent on a spectacular scale. Your parents have been propping up his lifestyle for years, and this wedding was supposed to be his entree into a wealthy family that could continue the subsidies. The report painted a picture I'd never fully understood. Tyler wasn't just the favored child. He was a financial liability that my parents had hidden through creative accounting and strategic manipulation of my resources. So the wedding isn't just about celebration, I said, pieces clicking into place. It's about transferring Tyler's financial responsibility to Sophia's family. Exactly. Marry him with money, make him someone else's problem, and hope the Blackwells never discover what they've inherited. David's investigation had uncovered another crucial detail. The Blackwell family had commissioned their own background check on Tyler before agreeing to the wedding. The report, conducted by a discreet investigative firm, had somehow missed Tyler's financial problems because the debts were hidden under my name and my parents' creative bookkeeping. If the Blackwells knew the truth about Tyler's finances, would they still support this wedding? I asked. David's smile was predatory. What do you think? That afternoon, I received an unexpected call from Sophia herself. Her voice carried the breathy excitement of a bride a week before her perfect day, but underneath I detected something else. Nervousness, maybe even doubt. Maya, I hope you don't mind me calling directly. Tyler gave me your number months ago, but I've been too shy to reach out. Of course not, Sophia. What can I help you with? Well, it's probably silly, but I wanted to make sure you felt included in the wedding preparations. Tyler mentioned that you're handling some of the vendor coordination, and I realized we haven't really talked much about your role in everything. The question caught me off guard. Tyler's fiancé was checking on my feelings about being relegated to unpaid labor at my own brother's wedding. That's very thoughtful of you to ask. It's just that I know how important family is, and I'd hate for you to feel like an employee instead of a sister. My parents always say that weddings should bring families together, not create divisions. Her sincerity was unexpected and somehow made the entire situation more painful. Sophia seemed genuinely concerned about my welfare, which was more consideration than I'd received from my actual family members. Sophia, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you know who's paying for your wedding? The pause stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Well, Tyler said his parents were handling most of the expenses. My parents are covering the rehearsal dinner and some other items. Is there something I should know? The innocence in her question crystallized something for me. Sophia had no idea that her fairy tale wedding was being funded through fraud and theft. She was as much a victim of my family's deception as I was. Nothing specific, I said carefully. I just wanted to make sure you felt comfortable with all the arrangements. Maya, you sound worried about something. Is everything okay with the wedding plans? For a moment, I considered telling her everything. Laying out the contracts, the stolen money, the systematic deception that was funding her perfect day. But something held me back. Maybe the knowledge that she'd learn the truth soon enough. Or maybe simple compassion for someone who was about to marry into my family's dysfunction. Everything's fine, Sophia. Just pre-wedding jitters on my end. Oh. I completely understand. I've been so nervous I can barely sleep. Tyler keeps telling me to relax, that everything's under control, but there are so many details. We talked for another 20 minutes about flowers, music, and reception logistics. Sophia's enthusiasm was infectious, and for brief moments I almost forgot that her dream wedding was built on a foundation of financial crimes. After hanging up, I felt a wave of something unexpected. Guilt. Sophia was innocent in all this. She'd fallen in love with Tyler without understanding his family's capacity for manipulation. The revelation I was planning would devastate her almost as much as it would destroy my parents' reputation. But then I remembered the unauthorized bank transfers, the forged contracts, and Tyler's casual assumption that I'd provide $15,000 for his romantic gesture. Sophia's innocence didn't change the fact that my family had committed serious crimes against me. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Maya, the wedding coordinator needs someone at the venue Friday afternoon to supervise flower deliveries. Can you handle that? Also, still need confirmation about Tyler's bracelet surprise. The message's tone, cheerful and assuming, illustrated perfectly how my parents viewed me. A resource to be deployed, a problem solver who could be counted on to handle whatever they couldn't be bothered with themselves. I screenshot the message and added it to David's evidence file. Thursday brought a flurry of vendor calls as various service providers confirmed final details for Tyler's weekend celebration. Each conversation reinforced my legal and financial responsibility for the event, while highlighting my family's complete absence from any practical planning. Elena Rodriguez called about flower delivery logistics. Maya, we'll have the arrangements. At the venue by noon Friday. Your assistant can coordinate placement with our design team. My assistant. Elena assumed I had staff helping coordinate Tyler's wedding because the scale of the event suggested a professional operation rather than a sister doing unpaid labor. James Patterson wanted to review the photography timeline. Maya, I've scheduled the family portraits for golden hour, but I need to confirm who should be included in the various groupings. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was coordinating family photos for a wedding funded through my stolen money, while being relegated to a back table during the actual reception. Marcus Chen from Metropolitan Catering called with a more serious concern. Maya, I need to address the final payment situation. Our contract specifies settlement the week of the event, but we haven't received the balance yet. How much is the final balance, Marcus? $65,000, due by Friday. Maya, is there a problem with payment? Because if we don't receive a settlement by Friday afternoon, we'll have to cancel service for Saturday. $65,000, due in 24 hours. The amount sat in my emergency fund, technically available but representing years of careful savings and financial security I'd built without family help. I'll handle the payment, Marcus. No need to worry about Saturday's service. You're a lifesaver, Maya. Tyler's lucky to have you coordinating everything. Tyler's lucky to have me. The phrase had become my family's unofficial motto, a constant reminder that my value existed in direct proportion to my usefulness. After hanging up, I sat in my apartment's afternoon silence, considering my options. I could pay Marcus's invoice and let Tyler's wedding proceed smoothly, absorbing the financial loss while maintaining family peace. I could refuse payment and let the catering collapse, creating immediate chaos, but revealing my hand too early. Or I could pay the invoice and proceed with my planned revelation, ensuring Tyler's wedding happened exactly as scheduled, right up until the moment I exposed everything. The third option appealed to me most. My family deserved to experience their perfect celebration before learning what it had actually cost. I transferred $65,000 to Metropolitan Catering. That evening, Jennifer Walsh called with an update on the legal preparations. Maya, we've finalized the evidence packages for key wedding guests. Each folder contains documentation of the financial crimes, copies of forged contracts, and bank records showing unauthorized transfers. How many packages? 15. We're targeting Charles Blackwell, the state senators, the tech CEO, and other influential guests whose opinions matter most to your parents. The goal is ensuring that everyone who matters knows exactly what kind of people Richard and Patricia Caldwell really are. Jennifer's clinical approach to reputation destruction was oddly comforting. This wasn't emotional revenge. It was strategic consequences delivered to people who valued social standing above personal integrity. What about timing? We've arranged for discreet delivery during the cocktail hour, before dinner service but after the ceremony. Guests will have time to review the information before your public statement. My public statement. The moment when I'd stand before 300 witnesses and reveal the truth about Tyler's dream wedding. Jennifer had helped me craft remarks that were factual, devastating, and legally protected. Are you ready for this, Maya? Jennifer asked. I thought about 32 years of being invisible, overlooked, and exploited. About stolen money and forged contracts. About Tyler's casual entitlement and my parents' systematic manipulation. About Sophia's innocent excitement for a wedding built on financial crimes. I'm ready. Friday morning brought a call from Tyler that nearly shattered my resolve. Maya, I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. The vendor coordination, helping with payments, just being the best sister anyone could ask for. His voice carried genuine emotion that I hadn't heard in years. For a moment, he sounded like the little brother I'd protected and encouraged throughout our childhood, before entitlement and parental favoritism had transformed him into someone I barely recognized. Tomorrow's going to be perfect because of you, Tyler continued. Sophia keeps saying how lucky I am to have a family who cares so much. I know I don't always show it, but I really appreciate everything you do. The gratitude in his voice was real, which somehow made everything worse. Tyler wasn't entirely a monster. He was a product of my parents' systematic favoritism and enabling. They'd created his entitlement while using my competence to clean up the consequences. I'm glad I could help Tyler. The bracelet thing worked out, right? I know it was short notice, but I really wanted to surprise Sophia with something amazing. The bracelet. I'd completely forgotten about Tyler's request for $15,000 to purchase Sophia's reception gift. Actually, Tyler, I need to talk to you about that. Is there a problem? Because I already told Sophia she'd love her surprise gift. Maya, please don't let me down on this. The pleading in his voice activated every protective instinct I'd developed over 3 decades of being Tyler's safety net. Despite everything I'd discovered about the wedding fraud, my first impulse was still to solve his problem and spare him disappointment. I'll take care of it, I heard myself saying. You're amazing, Maya. Tomorrow's going to be the best day of my life, and it's because I have you looking out for me. After hanging up, I sat in my car outside the jewelry store where Tyler expected me to purchase Sophia's $15,000 bracelet, trying to understand my own motivations. Was I enabling his entitlement one final time, or ensuring that his perfect day proceeded exactly as planned before I destroyed it completely? Maybe both. I walked into Tiffany & Co. and purchased a diamond tennis bracelet that cost more than my first car, charging it to the credit card that would be maxed out after this final gesture of family loyalty. 24 hours later, Tyler would stand before 300 guests and present his bride with a gift purchased using money stolen from his sister. The irony would be lost on him, but it wouldn't be lost on anyone else in attendance once they learned the truth. As I drove home with Sophia's bracelet in its iconic blue box, I realized that tomorrow's wedding would indeed be perfect. Right. Up until the moment it became Tyler's worst nightmare. My phone chimed with a final text from Patricia. Maya, everything looks beautiful for tomorrow. Thank you for making Tyler's dream wedding possible. We couldn't have done this without you. For once, my mother was telling the absolute truth. They couldn't have done it without me. Saturday morning dawned crystalline and perfect along the Hamptons coastline, the kind of day that wedding planners dream about and brides pray for. Standing on the balcony of my modest bed and breakfast room 40 minutes from the Meridian Club, I watched the sun paint golden streaks across the Atlantic while sipping coffee that tasted like cardboard and anticipation. My phone displayed 17 missed calls and 43 text messages from various vendors, wedding coordinators, and family members, the inevitable chaos that preceded any major event. Each notification reinforced my role as the invisible engine driving Tyler's perfect day, the person everyone counted on to solve problems and manage crises. Maya, emergency with the flowers. Elena Rodriguez's voicemail played at double speed, through my earbuds. The white roses for the ceremony arch have brown edges. We need approval to substitute with cream roses, or find a replacement supplier immediately. Marcus Chen from catering had left 3 increasingly urgent messages about dietary restrictions for prominent guests. Maya, we just learned that Senator Williams has a severe shellfish allergy, but our current menu includes lobster bisque for the first course. Need guidance ASAP. Even the transportation coordinator needed immediate decisions. Ms. Caldwell, the vintage Rolls-Royce has a minor mechanical issue. We can substitute with a classic Bentley, but I need authorization within the hour to ensure proper ribbon and flower coordination. Crisis after crisis, each one treated as catastrophic by vendors who assumed I was a professional event coordinator rather than an unpaid family member managing a wedding funded through stolen money. My responses came automatically after years of problem-solving experience. Approve the cream roses, substitute chicken consommé for guests with shellfish allergies, and confirm the Bentley alternative. By 9 a.m., I'd resolved 8 vendor emergencies, coordinated 3 delivery schedules, and somehow ensured that Tyler's dream wedding would proceed flawlessly despite the morning's minor disasters. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was working harder to guarantee my brother's perfect day than anyone else involved in the celebration, including Tyler himself. My rental car's GPS guided me through increasingly exclusive Hamptons neighborhoods as I approached the Meridian Club. Manicured estates gave way to even more magnificent properties, each one representing the kind of generational wealth that Tyler hoped to access through marriage to Sophia. The Meridian Club itself was spectacular. In the morning light, a sprawling oceanfront mansion that had hosted presidents, celebrities, and captains of industry for over a century. Gardens designed by Frederick Law Olmsted stretched toward private beaches where waves lapped against sand that seemed personally maintained for aesthetic perfection. Vendor trucks clustered around the service entrance like busy ants building something magnificent. Elena's floral team arranged towering centerpieces while Marcus's catering staff prepped stations for the evening's 5-course dinner. James Patterson tested lighting angles for afternoon photography, while the transportation team positioned vintage vehicles for optimal visual impact. I walked among them with my clipboard and vendor contact list, fielding questions and making decisions with an authority that felt both natural and surreal. These professionals respected my judgment and relied on my coordination, treating me with the deference typically reserved for clients paying substantial invoices. Maya, the ceremony sound system needs a final check, announced Kevin Walsh, the audio engineer. Can you confirm the microphone positions for the officiant and Tyler's vows? Maya, we need placement approval for the gift table, called Jessica from the venue coordination team. Should it go near the dance floor or closer to the entrance? Maya, the photographer, wants to review the family portrait schedule, said James Patterson's assistant. Some timing adjustments might be necessary based on the sunset timeline. Each request reinforced my central role in orchestrating Tyler's celebration while highlighting my family's complete absence from any practical planning. Where were my parents during this morning of final preparations? Where was Tyler himself? Presumably sleeping peacefully in their luxury accommodations while I ensured their perfect day proceeded without hitches. At 10:30, Patricia finally appeared, floating through the venue in a flowing lavender dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her entrance was theatrical rather than practical, a grand sweep through the gardens to inspect arrangements rather than engage with actual coordination. Maya, darling, everything looks absolutely divine, she announced, air-kissing my cheek, with the enthusiasm of someone admiring work they hadn't performed. You've outdone yourself with the vendor management. Tyler is going to be so grateful. She moved through the reception area like visiting royalty, commenting on flower arrangements and table settings with the authority of someone who'd made creative decisions rather than simply approved invoices. The roses are perfect, Patricia told Elena Rodriguez, apparently forgetting that the original white roses had been replaced with cream alternatives due to this morning's crisis. Exactly what I envisioned for Tyler's special day. Elena glanced at me with barely concealed confusion, recognizing the disconnect between Patricia's claims and the reality of our morning emergency management. I gave Elena a subtle nod indicating she should play along with whatever narrative my mother preferred. And the catering setup is magnificent, Patricia continued, gesturing toward Marcus's team as they arranged serving stations. The menu is going to be absolutely spectacular. Marcus smiled politely while privately texting me about final guest count confirmations and service timing adjustments, details Patricia couldn't help with because she'd never engaged with actual planning logistics. For 2 hours, I watched my mother accept credit for arrangements she hadn't made, decisions she hadn't contributed to, and vendor relationships she hadn't built. Her performance was flawless, conveying the impression of hands-on maternal involvement while I remained invisible in the background handling real responsibilities. Tyler arrived at noon with his groomsmen, a collection of college friends, and family connections who treated the wedding weekend like an extended bachelor party. Their energy was infectious, loud laughter, inside jokes, and the casual confidence of men who'd never questioned their access to luxury and privilege. "Maya!" Tyler swept me into an enthusiastic hug that smelled like expensive cologne and morning champagne. "Everything looks incredible. You're seriously the best sister in the world." His genuine affection almost broke my resolve again. This was the Tyler I remembered from childhood. Enthusiastic, appreciative, and seemingly unaware of the entitled monster he'd become under our parents' enabling influence. "Did the bracelet situation work out?" he whispered conspiratorially. "I can't wait to see Sophia's face when I surprise her with it during the reception." I patted my purse where Tiffany's iconic blue box rested alongside Jennifer Walsh's evidence packages and my prepared remarks. "Everything's handled, Tyler. You're amazing. I don't know what I'd do without you." His groomsmen dispersed to explore the venue while Tyler lingered with me near the ceremony setup. For a few minutes, we stood together watching vendors make final adjustments to the arch where he'd marry Sophia in 4 hours. "Maya, can I tell you something?" Tyler's voice carried uncharacteristic seriousness. "Of course. I know I haven't always been the best brother. Growing up, it felt like everything came easier to me than to you, and I probably took that for granted." The unexpected introspection caught me off guard. Tyler had never acknowledged the disparity in our treatment, never seemed to notice how family resources flowed in his direction while I learned independence through necessity. "Today feels like a fresh start," he continued. "Marriage, new family connections, real adult responsibility. I want to be better, Maya. I want to be someone you can be proud of." His sincerity was devastating. For a moment, I glimpsed the person Tyler might have become without years of parental favoritism and financial enabling. The brother who could recognize inequality and want to address it, who might have grown into genuine partnership rather than entitled dependency. "I'm already proud of you, Tyler," I said softly, meaning it despite everything else. "After the honeymoon, I want us to spend more time together. Real time, not just family obligations. Maybe you could teach me about business consulting? I've been thinking about starting my own company instead of relying on Dad's connections." The conversation was cruel timing. Tyler expressing genuine desire for growth and independence hours before, I would expose the financial crimes that funded his wedding. But his self-awareness felt too little, too late, especially considering the systematic deception that had brought us to this moment. "That sounds great, Tyler. We'll talk after you get back from the Maldives." Sophia arrived at 2 p.m. for pre-ceremony photography, radiant in a way that made everyone around her smile, involuntarily. Her wedding dress was museum-quality art, layers of silk and lace that had required 6 months of fittings and adjustments. The Blackwell family had spared no expense for their daughter's fairy tale moment. "Maya!" Sophia rushed to hug me with surprising warmth. "I can't believe this day is finally here. Everything looks so beautiful, and Tyler tells me you coordinated most of the vendor relationships." Her gratitude felt genuine, unlike my family's casual assumptions about my availability and competence. Sophia seemed to actually see me as a person rather than a resource to be utilized. "Are you excited?" I asked. "Terrified and thrilled simultaneously?" She laughed. "My mother says that's normal for wedding days, but I keep expecting something to go wrong at the last minute." Something was definitely going wrong at the last minute, just not in any way Sophia could anticipate. "Everything's going to be perfect," I assured her, which was technically true. Tyler's wedding would be absolutely perfect, right up until the moment I revealed how it had been funded. Charles Blackwell appeared with paternal pride and expensive photography equipment, documenting his daughter's final preparations with the attention of someone creating family heirlooms. His interaction with Sophia was warm and natural, the kind of father-daughter relationship I'd observed from a distance but never experienced personally. Several other Blackwell family members arrived throughout the afternoon: aunts, uncles, and cousins who treated Sophia with genuine affection while displaying the casual sophistication that came from generational privilege. Their social circle included exactly the kind of influential people my parents hoped to impress: politicians, business leaders, and cultural figures whose approval carried weight in exclusive circles. Jennifer Walsh's evidence packages would reach these people during cocktail hour, ensuring that Tyler's wedding reception became the most memorable social event of their lives for all the wrong reasons. At 4 p.m., guests began arriving for the 5:30 ceremony. Luxury vehicles deposited elegantly dressed couples who moved through the venue with practiced social grace, greeting acquaintances and admiring arrangements with the appreciation of people accustomed to high-end celebrations. I recognized faces from business magazines and political coverage: Senator Williams and his wife, tech CEO Rebecca Martinez, federal judge Thomas Harrison, and dozens of other influential figures whose presence validated my parents' social climbing aspirations. They mingled during the pre-ceremony cocktail hour, discussing business deals and vacation plans with the casual ease of people who never questioned their access to luxury. These were my parents' target audience, the people whose respect and acceptance they'd purchased using money stolen from their daughter. Patricia and Richard worked the crowd with practiced charm, introducing themselves as Tyler's proud parents, while accepting congratulations for the beautiful venue and elegant arrangements. They basked in reflected glory from vendors they'd never paid and coordination they'd never performed. "Such a lovely celebration," I overheard Senator Williams telling my father. "You and Patricia have created something truly special for Tyler and Sophia." "Family is everything," Richard replied with the sincerity of someone who genuinely believed his own mythology. "We wanted Tyler's wedding to reflect our values and commitment to the people we love." The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Richard spoke about family commitment while standing in a venue paid for with money stolen from his daughter, surrounded by arrangements coordinated through his daughter's unpaid labor, celebrating a son whose lifestyle they'd subsidized through systematic financial crimes. But their performance was flawless, and the audience was appropriately impressed. Tyler's wedding was establishing exactly the social connections my parents had hoped for, creating business relationships and personal networks that would benefit their son for years to come. At 5:15, guests began moving toward the ceremony seating area where 300 white chairs faced the oceanfront arch where Tyler would marry Sophia. The late afternoon sun created perfect lighting while gentle waves provided a natural soundtrack for their vows. I took my assigned seat in the second to last row, surrounded by distant relatives and vendor representatives who'd been granted ceremony access. From my position, I could observe the entire gathering while remaining appropriately invisible, the perfect vantage point for someone about to become the most memorable person at Tyler's wedding reception. Jennifer Walsh caught my eye from her position among the back row guests, offering a subtle nod that confirmed everything was proceeding according to plan. Evidence packages were prepared for distribution during cocktail hour, and my public statement was ready for delivery during the reception dinner service. As the string quartet began playing and Tyler took his position at the altar, I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. After 32 years of being invisible, overlooked, and exploited, I was about to become the center of attention at the most important social event of my family's lives. Tyler's perfect wedding day was about to become perfect in ways he never could have imagined. The ceremony unfolded like something from a luxury wedding magazine. Tyler stood at the altar in his custom-tailored tuxedo, hands clasped behind his back as he watched Sophia glide down the rose-petal-strewn aisle on Charles Blackwell's arm. The string quartet's rendition of Pachelbel's Bell's Canon provided the perfect soundtrack while 300 guests rose in reverent appreciation of the bride's ethereal beauty. Sophia was luminous in a way that transcended mere physical appearance. Her dress, a masterpiece of French lace and Italian silk, caught the golden afternoon light filtering through the ceremony arch. But it was her expression of pure joy that made everyone present smile involuntarily. The radiant happiness of someone experiencing a fairy tale moment. From my position in the second-to-last row, I watched my brother's face transform when he saw his bride approaching. His usual casual confidence melted into something more vulnerable and genuine. For those precious minutes, Tyler looked like the earnest boy I'd grown up protecting rather than the entitled young man he'd become. The officiant, Reverend Margaret Stone, spoke about love as foundation and partnership as strength. Her words carried the wisdom of someone who'd witnessed hundreds of couples make promises they hoped to keep forever. Marriage is not just the union of two hearts, she said, but the joining of two families, two histories, two futures built on trust and mutual support. Trust and mutual support. The irony of those words being spoken at a wedding funded through family betrayal wasn't lost on me, though I seemed to be the only person present who appreciated the contradiction. Tyler's vows were surprisingly heartfelt. He spoke about Sophia changing his perspective on responsibility and commitment, about wanting to become worthy of her faith in him. "You make me want to be better than I've ever been," he said, his voice breaking slightly with emotion. "I promise to spend my life earning the love you've given me so freely." Several guests wiped their eyes during Tyler's promises, moved by what appeared to be genuine transformation. Even I felt a flicker of hope that marriage might indeed inspire my brother to develop the character he'd never needed while living under our parents' protective financial umbrella. Sophia's vows were equally moving, speaking about partnership and adventure, about building something beautiful together. "I love your generous heart," she told Tyler, "your loyalty to family, and your determination to create something meaningful with your life. Your loyalty to family." If only Sophia knew how Tyler's family loyalty had been funded through crimes against his sister. When Reverend Stone pronounced them husband and wife, Tyler's kiss was tender and full of promise. The 300 guests erupted in applause as the new couple walked back down the aisle, their faces glowing with happiness and possibility. I remained seated as the crowd filed out toward the cocktail reception, watching families pose for photographs and friends offer congratulations. The ceremony had been genuinely beautiful, a perfect beginning to what everyone assumed would be Tyler and Sophia's happily ever after. But I knew better. In approximately 90 minutes during the reception dinner service, Tyler's fairy tale would transform into his worst nightmare when 300 influential witnesses learned exactly how his perfect wedding had been funded. The cocktail hour buzzed with animated conversation as guests mingled on the oceanfront terrace. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres, while a jazz trio provided sophisticated background music. The setting was postcard perfect, elegant people in designer clothes celebrating love and new beginnings against the backdrop of a golden sunset. I nursed my champagne while observing the social dynamics unfolding around me. Senator Williams discussed infrastructure legislation with tech CEO Rebecca Martinez. Federal Judge Harrison shared vacation recommendations with the Blackwell family patriarch. Business deals were being discussed, political connections strengthened, and social networks expanded. This was exactly what my parents had purchased with my stolen money: access to influential circles that could benefit Tyler's future in countless ways. Every handshake, every exchanged business card, every invitation to future social events represented a return on their investment in creating Tyler's dream wedding. Patricia and Richard worked the crowd with practiced efficiency, ensuring they met every person of importance while positioning themselves as gracious hosts rather than desperate social climbers. Their performance was masterful, conveying old money elegance despite their middle-class origins. "What a lovely family," I overheard Mrs. Blackwell telling another guest. "Richard and Patricia have raised such a wonderful son. This wedding reflects their values beautifully." Their values. If only Mrs. Blackwell understood what those values actually included. Across the terrace, Jennifer Walsh moved discreetly among the guests, her appearance so professional and understated that she blended seamlessly with the other sophisticated attendees. As planned, she carried a leather portfolio containing evidence packages for key wedding guests, documentation that would soon transform casual cocktail conversation into shocked whispers and horrified realizations. I watched Jennifer approach Charles Blackwell during a moment when he'd stepped away from the main crowd to take a phone call. Their conversation appeared casual from a distance, but I knew she was explaining who she was and why the information in her envelope would interest him. Charles's expression remained neutral as he accepted the package, though his eyes sharpened with the focus of someone accustomed to evaluating important documents quickly. Similar scenes played out across the terrace as Jennifer distributed evidence. Packages to Senator Williams, CEO Martinez, Judge Harrison, and other influential guests whose opinions my parents valued above family loyalty. Each recipient was told the same thing: review the information privately, then watch for a public statement during dinner service that would provide context and consequences. Tyler and Sophia made their grand entrance to applause and champagne. Toasts, moving through the crowd like celebrities accepting congratulations from their adoring public. They radiated happiness and confidence, secure in their love and optimistic about their future together. "Maya." Sophia broke away from a group of well-wishers to hug me warmly. "Wasn't the ceremony beautiful? I can't believe we're actually married." Her joy was infectious and heartbreaking simultaneously. In less than 2 hours, Sophia would learn that her fairy tale wedding had been funded through crimes against her new sister-in-law. "It was perfect," I said honestly. The ceremony itself had been flawless, regardless of how it had been financed. "Tyler keeps saying none of this would have been possible without you handling all the coordination," Sophia continued. "We're so grateful for everything you've done." She had no idea how accurately Tyler had described my role. None of this would have been possible without me. Not just the coordination, but the financial guarantees, the vendor relationships, and the stolen money that had paid for every elegant detail. "Just happy I could help," I managed. Tyler appeared with champagne for his bride, his arm sliding around her waist with possessive pride. "These are my 2 favorite women," he announced. "Maya, everyone keeps complimenting the flowers and asking about the catering. You really outdid yourself with the vendor coordination." The casual way he accepted credit for my work while acknowledging my effort, just enough to seem gracious, perfectly, captured our family dynamic. Tyler got the praise while I got the responsibility, a pattern that had defined our relationship for 3 decades. "The bracelet presentation is going to be during dinner service, right?" Tyler whispered to me. "I want to surprise Sophia when everyone's seated and paying attention." "Everything's arranged," I confirmed, patting my purse where Tiffany's blue box rested alongside my prepared remarks. Tyler's surprise gift presentation would indeed happen during dinner service, followed immediately by my own surprise revelation that would overshadow his romantic gesture completely. As the cocktail hour progressed, I noticed subtle changes in the behavior of guests who'd received Jennifer's evidence packages. Charles Blackwell studied his documents with the intensity of someone reviewing a business contract, his expression growing increasingly grim. Senator Williams stepped away from the crowd to make several phone calls after reading his materials. CEO Martinez excused herself from conversation to focus on the evidence Jennifer had provided. One by one, the most influential guests at Tyler's wedding learned the truth about how their beautiful celebration had been funded. None of them approached me directly, but I felt their eyes tracking my movements with new understanding and what appeared to be sympathy rather than judgment. They recognized me as a victim rather than a co-conspirator, which was exactly what Jennifer had intended when crafting the evidence packages and timing their distribution. Dinner service began at 7:30 as guests moved from the terrace to the elegantly appointed reception hall. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over tables decorated with towering floral centerpieces, while servers prepared to deliver Marcus Chen's carefully planned 5-course meal. I found my assigned seat at table 18, positioned near the kitchen, entrance where I could continue managing any service issues that arose. My table companions included distant relatives and vendor representatives. Kind people, but not the influential social connections my parents hoped to cultivate through Tyler's wedding celebration. Patricia stood to offer a toast before the first course arrived, her voice carrying across the reception hall with practiced maternal warmth. Tonight, we celebrate not just Tyler and Sophia's love, but the joining of 2 wonderful families. This beautiful wedding represents everything Richard and I believe about commitment, generosity, and putting family first. The guests applauded, politely, unaware that 15 of them now possessed evidence contradicting every word Patricia had just spoken. Her toast about family commitment and generosity was particularly ironic, considering she'd stolen from her daughter to fund the celebration. She was taking credit for hosting. Tyler stood next, raising his champagne flute with the confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to luxury and attention. I want to thank my amazing parents for making this dream wedding possible, and my incredible sister Maya for handling all the details that made tonight perfect. He gestured toward my back corner table with genuine appreciation, finally acknowledging my contributions publicly. The recognition I'd wanted for years came at the precise moment when it no longer mattered, when I was minutes away from revealing the true cost of Tyler's gratitude. And now, Tyler continued, his voice dropping to the intimate register reserved. For romantic declarations, I want to surprise my beautiful wife with something special. He pulled Tiffany's distinctive blue box from his jacket pocket, and Sophia gasped with delighted surprise. The entire reception hall focused on their table as Tyler opened the box to reveal the $15,000 diamond tennis bracelet I'd purchased using money I could barely afford to spend. Sophia Caldwell, Tyler said, using her new married name for the first time publicly. You've made me the happiest man alive. I love you more than words can express. The bracelet sparkled under the chandeliers as Tyler fastened it around Sophia's wrist, while 300 guests watched the romantic gesture with warm approval. Sophia's tears of joy were genuine, her happiness at receiving such an extravagant symbol of Tyler's love absolutely authentic. She had no idea that her romantic surprise had been funded by the same woman who'd coordinated every detail of their perfect wedding day. As applause filled the reception hall and Tyler kissed his wife while she admired her sparkling new jewelry, I stood slowly and began walking toward the head table. It was time for my own surprise presentation. The reception hall gradually quieted as guests noticed me walking steadily toward the head table, where Tyler and Sophia sat basking in the warm glow of their bracelet moment. My heels clicked against the polished marble floor with a rhythm that seemed to echo in the sudden hush. 300 pairs of eyes following my movement with growing curiosity. Tyler looked up with a bright smile as I approached, still holding Sophia's hand while she admired her sparkling new jewelry. Maya, Did you want to see how perfect the bracelet looks? Sophia absolutely loves it. It's absolutely stunning, Sophia added, extending her wrist so I could admire Tyler's romantic gesture. Tyler said you helped coordinate the purchase. Thank you so much for making this surprise possible. Her gratitude was genuine and heartbreaking. Sophia had no idea she was thanking me for bankrupting myself to fund her husband's romantic gesture with money I'd borrowed against my emergency fund. Actually, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the now silent reception hall, I wanted to share something with everyone about how tonight's celebration became possible. Patricia's smile flickered with uncertainty as she registered the change in my tone. Richard straightened in his chair, some parental instinct warning him that the evening was about to shift in an unexpected direction. Maya, sweetheart, Patricia said with forced lightness, perhaps we should save speeches for after-dinner service. This won't take long, I replied, turning to address the entire gathering. I just wanted everyone to understand exactly how Tyler's dream wedding was funded. The silence in the reception hall became absolute. Even the servers stopped moving, sensing the shift in energy that preceded either triumph or disaster. I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app I'd prepared for this moment. Tyler, do you know how much your wedding cost? My brother's smile faltered slightly. Mom and Dad handled all the financial arrangements. I just focused on marrying the woman I love. The final total was $487,000, I announced, my voice steady, despite my racing heart. The Meridian Club venue rental, Metropolitan Catering, Hampton's Premier Florals, Prestige Photography, transportation, music, and every other detail that made tonight perfect. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as guests processed the astronomical figure. Some looked impressed by the extravagance, others seemed shocked by the casual mention of such enormous expense. That's quite generous of Mom and Dad, Tyler said, uncertainly, glancing at our parents who had gone very pale. Actually, Tyler, Mom, and Dad didn't pay for any of it. I turned my phone screen toward the head table, displaying bank records that showed months of payments to wedding vendors. Every single vendor was paid from my personal and business accounts. I funded your entire wedding celebration. The gasps from nearby tables were audible now. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth as she stared at the banking records, beginning to understand the implications of what I was revealing. But that's impossible, Tyler stammered. Maya, you don't have that kind of money. You're absolutely right. I didn't have $487,000. I smiled at him with crystalline calm. So how do you think I managed to pay for everything? Charles Blackwell stood slowly from his seat, his face flushed with anger as he held up the evidence package Jennifer had given him during cocktail hour. I believe I can answer that question. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention in boardrooms and courtrooms. The entire reception hall focused on him as he opened the manila folder, containing copies of forged contracts and unauthorized banking transactions. Ladies and gentlemen, Charles continued, his tone carrying prosecutorial precision, Maya Caldwell has been the victim of systematic financial fraud perpetrated by her own family members. The documents I've reviewed show forged signatures, unauthorized electronic fund transfers, and identity theft spanning nearly 2 years. Senator Williams rose from his table, holding his own evidence package. The crimes documented here include multiple felonies, wire fraud, computer crimes, theft exceeding $50,000, and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. More guests began standing, each holding identical folders containing the same damning evidence. CEO Rebecca Martinez, federal judge, Harrison, and a dozen other influential attendees who'd received Jennifer's carefully prepared documentation during cocktail hour. Maya's parents used her professional relationships to secure vendor contracts they couldn't afford, Judge Harrison announced, his judicial authority lending gravity to every word. They accessed her personal devices to authorize payments from her accounts without permission. They systematically stole nearly $500,000 from their own daughter to fund this wedding celebration. the reception hall erupted in shocked whispers and horrified gasps as 300 guests processed the magnitude of what they were learning. Patricia and Richard sat frozen at the head table, their faces ashen as their crimes were exposed before everyone they'd hoped to impress. Tyler stared at me with dawning horror. "Maya, this can't be true. Tell me this isn't true." I pulled Tiffany's blue box from my purse and placed it gently on the table beside Sophia's champagne flute. "The bracelet you just gave your wife? I purchased it yesterday using money borrowed against my emergency fund because you asked me to help make Sophia's surprise special." Sophia's tears were no longer tears of joy. She looked at the sparkling tennis bracelet on her wrist as if it had transformed into a poisonous snake. Every flower arrangement, every piece of crystal, every elegant detail you've admired tonight was paid for with money stolen from the person your family considers least important. I continued, my voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. I coordinated vendors, managed crises, and solved problems for months while my parents took credit for generosity they'd never shown. "Maya, please." Richard stood unsteadily, his voice shaking. "This is a misunderstanding. We can explain everything privately." "No more private explanations," I replied firmly. "No more family meetings where you manipulate the narrative. Everyone here deserves to know exactly what kind of people you really are." Charles Blackwell's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Richard and Patricia Caldwell, you've perpetrated crimes against your own daughter to fund social climbing. That would benefit your son. You've stolen from the person who loved you most to impress people whose respect you'll never deserve." His words carried the weight of moral authority that came from genuine character, the kind of integrity my parents had tried to purchase through association rather than develop through behavior. "Sophia," I said gently, addressing my new sister-in-law, directly, "none of this is your fault. You fell in love with Tyler without knowing how his family operates. But you deserve to understand what you've married into." Sophia looked at Tyler with a dawning realization about the man she'd just promised to spend her life with. "Did you know?" she whispered. "Did you know they were stealing from Maya to pay for our wedding?" Tyler's silence was answer enough. He hadn't known the specific details, but he'd never questioned how his family suddenly afforded such extravagance. He'd accepted luxury without curiosity about its source, just as he'd accepted privileges throughout his life without considering their cost to others. "I want everyone here to understand," I announced to the gathering, "that Tyler's wedding celebration cost me my life savings, my emergency fund, and my financial security. It was funded through criminal activity disguised as family support." Patricia finally found her voice, though it came out as a desperate whisper. "Maya, you're destroying your brother's marriage. How can you do this to your family?" Her question sparked something that had been building inside me for 32 years. "How can I do this for my family?" I repeated, my voice rising with emotion. I'd kept contained for too long. I sacrificed everything for this family. I worked multiple jobs to support Tyler's education. I built professional relationships you exploited for your benefit. I signed contracts and authorized payments because I trusted you. The reception hall remained absolutely silent as I continued. You used my love against me. You weaponized my competence to commit crimes. You stole from me systematically while treating me like unpaid staff at my own brother's wedding. And now you ask how I can do this to my family? I looked directly at Patricia and Richard, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time in my adult life. "I'm not doing anything for my family. I'm finally stopping you from doing things to me." The aftermath unfolded swiftly. Several guests were already making phone calls, likely to lawyers and law enforcement contacts who would ensure appropriate consequences for the crimes that had been exposed. The Blackwell family huddled in urgent conversation, clearly reconsidering their association with Tyler and his criminal parents. Tyler sat in stunned silence while Sophia quietly removed the diamond bracelet from her wrist and placed it on the beige table. Her fairy tale wedding had transformed into a nightmare of family fraud and stolen money. but her dignity remained intact as she processed the reality of what she'd unknowingly participated in. As I walked away from the head table, leaving my family to face the consequences of their choices, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. The weight of thankless obligation, financial exploitation, and emotional manipulation lifted from my shoulders with each step toward the exit. Outside the reception hall, Jennifer Walsh waited with legal documents and a satisfied expression. "Maya, that was exactly what they deserved. Are you ready for the next phase?" I looked back through the windows at the chaos unfolding inside. My parents surrounded by angry guests, Tyler trying to comfort his devastated wife, and the 300 witnesses who would ensure this story followed the Caldwell family for years to come. "I'm ready for whatever comes next," I said. "But first, I'm ready to finally put myself first." The perfect wedding had ended exactly as planned, with truth, consequences, and the kind of justice that money couldn't buy. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now, and hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.